So let's move on to the fifth and final section in our certification program, which is looking to use gShift to generate sales, and or again from a branded perspective for a marketing department to be able to justify budget, particularly from an organic or SEO perspective. So for that, I'm going to jump back out to Global Sawmills. And really all we're looking to do here is to think about using gShift in a different way, not so much for monitoring on an ongoing basis, but rather for running an audit for all intents and purposes, whether that be an audit on your own site on a few different levels, whether it be from a technical perspective, from a keyword perspective, from a content perspective, or from doing a more comprehensive competitive audit. Again, looking to identify weaknesses, opportunities, or threats, or our SWOT analysis without the S, because we're trying to identify those opportunities to move forward or to make progress to build or reestablish our authority. So we'll take another look. We're going to really review some of the same stuff that we looked at back on Tuesday, but with an eye towards doing it from a more sort of pre-sales and or budgetary perspective. So again, just getting back to the site audit, what I typically recommend if you're going to be running an audit from this perspective would be to look at doing it as a smaller audit. So where we default to a medium audit, you're likely just going to want to run that as a small audit. You may determine, whether or not you want to look at all pages, images, JavaScript, style sheets, and PDFs, or simply looking at pages and images to identify again trends in terms of issues from a technical SEO perspective. I suppose the other thing I should have mentioned before I jumped into site audit, that particularly for agencies, this is meaning, or there'd be a requirement to set up a separate web presence. So go through the process of setting up a basic presence, adding in a website, adding in a few keywords to track, and that doesn't need to be a large number of keywords. Think about what are the primary keywords if you're looking at a prospect that they appear to be using or appear to be focused around. So plug in, let's say 10, 20 keywords as a starting point. When you set up that web presence, there's an option to add in a Google Analytics account. To create a pre-sales audit, you really don't need to do that. If you have analytics data, that's great. But what we're going to be walking through now doesn't require that analytics data to be in place to be able to generate, a pretty healthy report and a pretty healthy view of data and presence without necessarily the traffic data. So just getting back to our audit, then we're going to run a very simple basic audit. Let's say we choose our primary website. Now you might also think about running a competitive audit. Again, a small competitive audit to be able to show a client or to show where the differences lie or where the opportunities are. Again, the audit can provide a sense of what titles and what keywords are being used within titles, what keywords are being used within headings within a competitive site. So using that data to be able to put together a sense of how a competitor has appeared to optimize their own presence. So we would run a small audit. And again, just to refresh from what we looked at the other day, the audit that we ultimately generate will look something like this. We'll break down a list of prioritized recommendations, the critical, medium, and low priority items, along with a summary. Now this is the HTML view that we've generated from here. This is more our typically working copy. We want to understand what's happening with our presence. From a pre-sales, from a report perspective, we're likely jumping over to create a report based on this audit. And again, keeping it simple, likely limiting the number of items down to things like, show, maybe not even which resources we crawled, but a summary, which is going to give us our prioritized recommendations, show titles and or missing page titles, show headings and missing headings, maybe meta description, but for the most part, deselecting the rest of this information, and it completely depends on what you want to report on to your client, how much or how little. And in many cases, particularly from a pre-sales perspective, less is more. Give them a flavor or a taste for what appear to be the glaring issues with the site or presence that we can work on. And so we configure our report, we hit run now, and ultimately that generates a PDF report that we can download and pass along to our client or prospect. One thing I will mention as this is running, if you're thinking about using gShift from this perspective, best recommendation would be to give yourself some time. 24 to 48 hours if you're going to be working with a client or looking to run this type of an audit. Make sure you give yourself enough time to be able to collect the data. Now, with a new web presence, keyword position data will be there, definitely within 24 hours. Likewise, competitive data, but you want to give yourself that buffer to make sure that you have the time to collect and put the data together. It looks like this is going to take a little bit longer than I'd like to run. Let me see if I can get this. There we go. This one downloaded much quicker. So this is an example of just, again, a sample audit. So it would have agency logo, client name. We can include the client logo, the site obviously that the audit was run on and the date, a breakdown of the resources that were crawled, and then a list of the critical, medium, or low-hanging fruit recommendations, and then much more detailed. And again, this might be something you decide to turn on or off. It might be enough just to show the recommendations from a simple auditing or pre-sales perspective. Moving on from there, from the audit, the other opportunity you have is to go beyond looking at simply the client's site and thinking about, well, first off, you could run certainly a web presence report, depending again whether you have analytics. The data may be limited, but you may look at running a simple report based on keyword positions. But from there, you can also look at our competition reports. So referred to this the other day. There's two types of competition reports we offer. The first is a more keyword specific report. So this allows you to compare against up to 10 different competitors. Primarily, we can look at things like keyword position distribution. So how many positions does our prospect maintain on page 1 versus 2 to 3 versus 3 to 5. Then we can break down more specifically across 3 engines. Where does our client compare to their competitor? And we can incorporate some color coding as well as the search volume. So the color coding to identify where our client is behind, where they're ahead, and or who they're trailing. And that color coding can be a quick way of visualizing for prospect or for a superior in our marketing department, where the threats exist or where there are opportunities to look to build our authority. We can also include a backlinks comparison and a technical comparison, the number of index pages, which can be a good way of identifying content marketing opportunities. If your prospect's trailing in terms of the number of index pages they have out there, it's a good opportunity to point out that you should be creating more content. And that's how you're ultimately going to build your authority. So in terms of just looking quickly at this report, saw this the other day, but we'll run through and quickly show you that we break down the presence, the time period, the cluster in this case, and the number of search engines. We're tracking a whole number of search engines for this particular client. So we see keyword position distribution for the client versus, or for ourselves versus our competitor, also displayed in a bar chart, and then a side-by-side comparison for the cluster of keywords we've chosen, the search volume for each of those, and where we're ahead in green, behind in red, and if we're behind, who specifically we're trailing. So if you see this, in terms of having, and we're only looking at one competitor, but if you had 3 or 4 competitors, and we see places where we're trailing for multiple keywords and by significant amounts, it can make for a pretty good story in terms of why we should be focusing more attention on our organic visibility and our content marketing efforts. As we scroll down, we have our quick backlinks comparison. So why should we be looking to do backlink research and obtain more backlinks? In this case, we're outflanking our competitors, so the case really can't be made here. But if it were a case of our competitor with more backlinks, not that we don't all know that it's quality versus quantity, but in cases where you're trailing a competitor, they have more backlinks, that gets to be a pretty easy story to tell. And as we scroll down, we can see that index pages, our client has fewer index pages than the competitor. There's our opportunity to look to create some more content, potentially as, again, a means to improving our overall visibility. We also have the breakdown of domain information. Not a whole lot we can do about that, perhaps the hosting location, but age of domain and when it expires, really just pointing out that this might be, again, another factor in terms of our overall organic visibility. And so that's the competition report. The second report is competitive visibility, and this one has less focus on keyword and specific keywords and looks more at things from a visibility score perspective at a higher level. And we've more and more agencies, more and more clients who are looking to defocus attention from specific keywords and look more at keyword clusters or topical groups of keywords. So we can choose a cluster that we want to report on. So let's say we want to show, how are we comparing to our competitors for our focused English keywords or our French keywords or our German keywords. We run this report for, again, a specific time range or comparative time range against up to 10 competitors. And what we end up with here, if we go in view, the HTML version of this report, again, you'll see no specific keywords in this report. So the presence, the time period, the cluster, the search engine, and the competitors being followed. And then this one simply breaks down how many positions do we maintain in the number 1 position versus competitors, how many in the 1 to 10 or page 1, 2 to 3, 3 to 5. What's our visibility score, which we talked about last time around. How many positions have moved up or down? What sort of total gain and or net gain have we seen? And then we break that out over time periods. So gains versus losses, again, comparatives to our competitors, net gain loss, and our visibility score. So just a higher level way of looking at a competitive comparison. And again, particularly if we're trailing, gives us ample ammunition to talk about improving our overall visibility. So those are a couple of reports along with the site audit that you can run. The other option and piece that we make available is a templated dashboard that we've created. And so if you go into your dashboard section down at the presence level and add a new dashboard, we've created what we're calling the competitive visibility keyword and content audit. So if I select that, if I'm in my new dashboard creation, I select that template, and most likely I want to create that as an editable dashboard because that'll allow me to decide whether I want to use and incorporate all of the beacons that we've added. But what we've effectively done is created a collection of beacons, as the description suggests here, designed to create a web presence audit for a qualified prospect. And we're looking to incorporate a combination of competitive data, so discovering competitors, and really this report or this dashboard can be generated, again, based on simply plugging in a new presence with a few keywords and then either known, or once you have that keyword data coming in, some identified or discovered competitors, right? So we have a sense of who the competitors for this client are already. If we don't, plug those keywords in, wait a few hours or wait until the next day, and we'll come back with some discovered competitors for you. And then you can follow those competitors. Again, there'll be a waiting period to get the keyword data or the position data back for those. But we can then take those competitors and or our, again, named competitors, if we have some known competitors for any of our, either ourselves or our prospect, we can plug them into these beacons. So you'll see that we've got one competitor, our default competitor that comes up, but we can go in and we can configure this particular beacon to pull in multiple competitors. So let's say I want this competitor Logasol. We'll take a look at Timber King, and we'll look at Wood-Mizer as an example. And that provides us with a sense of where we are in terms of our visibility score relative to our competitors for a chosen group of keywords. And again, if it's a simple presence we set up, we would have a default, maybe all keywords that would populate and allow us to get a quick sense of our overall visibility. To the right of that, we have keyword position distribution. We can likewise add in, more competitors as we need to. So we'll say, let's choose the same set of competitors here. Oops, well, UK, we'll go with UK instead of US. Update, and again, we can see that comparison. In this case, our global sawmills client is always winning out, but in the case where there's a trend in the other direction and we're trailing competitors, again, that helps to build our story in terms of why we should be focusing more on our overall visibility. We've got the same keyword competitive or keyword position comparison that we saw in the competition report, only here in a beacon within our dashboard. We can also run this predictive traffic boost. So this provides us the ability to look at a given keyword, its current position and search volume, based on our click-through rates, which again, we can adjust if necessary, but we have a default set that we offer. This provides us with a sense of how much organic traffic should we be driving based on our currently being in number 4. But then also looking to identify what would happen if we were able to improve our position. If we were able to go from number 4 to number 1 position, what resulting traffic boost would we see from that? And we can go down through our group of keywords and look to move more than one of our positions and build our story for why we should look to focus on, in this case, these 3 particular keywords, or within the context of a content marketing campaign, to ultimately generate more traffic, and a traffic boost in this case of up to 52%. So that makes, again, for a good story. Scrolling down, we also have the opportunity to look at where our content opportunities lie. What content do we have that's considered average and or weak? These are pieces of content that we should likely work on to build the authority of over time. And to the right of that, we also have our discovered content beacon, which is going to show us content that's currently ranking that we're, in this case, not following. And we can look at this from the perspective of ranking content, or as we looked at the other day, we can configure this beacon to see content that, now, if we have access to analytics, we can look at content that's visible based on traffic. But if we don't, we can also look at content that has backlinks pointed to it. And in each case, we're looking for those opportunities to say, these are the pieces of content that we should be focusing on. The ones that are considered either average or weak, and or because at least with these, we have some level of momentum. And likewise, with any pieces of content that have backlinks to them, there's an opportunity to build on the authority of those pages. And so with this dashboard, again, we created as an editable dashboard. You can choose to include whichever pieces you think make sense to build that story. You can edit the dashboard. We've provided at the very top a quick breakdown of the 7 beacons included and the questions that they're meant to answer. But if you're looking to ultimately turn this dashboard into a report, you can remove that particular beacon and or any of the others, whichever of these makes sense to include or incorporate. And from here, you can either take snapshots of any of these. Again, if I wanted to take a snapshot of our competitive visibility beacon, maybe drop that into a PowerPoint or a Word doc, or simply email that to my client or prospect or my superior, whoever I'm happen to be making the case to. So I would download that as an image and just send it along. Alternatively, again, as I pointed out previously, you can turn this entire dashboard into a PDF. Now, you'll likely want to spend a little bit of time making sure that the layout works so that you have the right number of beacons on the right number of pages and things aren't breaking, depending on how much data is contained in each. But there's opportunity to custom configure and really turn this dashboard into something that you can use to report on and build a pretty solid story around your SEO plans and or efforts. That primarily covers what we wanted to in section 5. The only last piece I'll point out is we do, for those who aren't aware, have both a referral and a reseller partner program. Those you can find out more detail on both of those through our partners page here on our website. Opportunities, again, from a sales perspective, to perhaps generate some additional revenue. So wanted to let you know about that. And that pretty much covers what I wanted to cover today. But we do have a little bit of time here for some Q&A. Just before I jump there, you'll see I've got a couple of links that you can certainly check out. Our Help Center. We talked about contextuals today, and we have a very detailed contextuals guide that you can download from our previous sessions. We also have our Getting Started guide that you can download at any time. And then if there's any follow-on questions or issues that arise, you can email those to support@gshiftlabs.com. And or if you've got any feedback, feature requests, you can send those to feedback@gshiftlabs.com. Those come both to myself and to our VP of technology. So we're on top of those requests as they come in. And that's what I have today. So I'm going to jump over. I'm sure Brandon has been active answering any questions as they've come up, but I'll go back, and I see we just have a couple of questions here. I'll take a quick look. Can we see a report from Contextual that was shared across AdWords and Facebook? Really, the reporting, just to answer the question, Chris, would be nothing different than what you've seen. It really just comes down to the tagging. So it's going to be a report that will show the number of clicks that have been received via AdWords and or Facebook channels, though you could also create contextuals around the specific ads, and or you could use the tags and tag values to, again, specify by ad type or by ad theme. So you've got the flexibility of using your tags and tag values to do that from an AdWords or display ads or programmatic perspective. Question about competitive visibility and how to best describe the result of this beacon to clients. So we talked about visibility score last time. Our visibility score is based around assigning a value to each of the positions that you, and in this case, your competitor, maintains within the top 50 search results. The higher or closer you are to number one, the higher the value. So for instance, in the number one position, you get 33 points, I believe. Below that, in the number two position, it drops to 20. In the number three position, it drops to 12, and so on and so forth. And we we aggregate all of the values for all of the positions you maintain across multiple keywords, and then we divide the total value for both you and your competitors by the total possible score that you can maintain if you were to have ownership of every single position in the top 50, which, as we all know, is virtually impossible. But that truly represents, total visibility. If you maintain 1 through 50, you would have 100%. You'd have the highest possible score. But what we do with your values is we divide them. So we take you're in the first position, you're in the third position, you're in the fifth position. You get values for each of those, and we divide that by the total. So sometimes those visibility scores can be relatively low, particularly for unbranded keywords. The only time we see really high visibility scores is when you have a branded term where you have that opportunity to maintain multiple positions. So the way that I typically recommend presenting to a prospect or to a superior is, let's look at the relative visibility that we maintain versus our competitors. Do we have 2 times more, 3 times more, or are we that much behind competitors that we need to work our way up? And we do that by looking at, again, the group or cluster of keywords that visibility score was based on, and we optimize the content and or build more content, authoritative content, distribute that content to build our overall authority around those topical keywords. So I hope that answers the question. Oops, I didn't mean to click out of there. Let's go back. I don't see any other questions, and I certainly appreciate everyone's attention and patience over the last roughly 3 hours of content that I've gone through. We sincerely appreciate it. As I mentioned, we're going to be sending out recordings. We already have sent out the recordings of the first 3 sessions. We'll be sending out as well 2 specific to the 2 sections we covered today, along with the certification questionnaires. You're all welcome to fill those out. We'll be marking or grading those and sending them back along with your certifications. So those will be links to certificates that you can perhaps share or use on your LinkedIn profiles. Show proudly to your colleagues and friends. And for agencies, sending along badges that you can incorporate into your website as certified trained partners. So again, thank you everyone for your time and attention. Sincerely appreciate it, and we look forward to talking to you again in the near future. If you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to either the email addresses noted there, and we look forward to working with you all moving forward. Cheers.